Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com on the Sports Bash now. Let's dive into this first breaking news a little bit, as you just wrote about, Frank. Jerad Eickoff after Home Run Derby. Remember that show, Home Run Derby, with Lou Gehrig and them guys back in the 60s?
I was not alive in the 60s, Mike.
Well, they used to replay the shows, on ESPN Classic. You would see them, playing Home Run Derby. And I feel like Eickoff might have been the pitcher for those times.
Yeah, that was something else last night. I know that on the Diamondback side of things, of course, they were having a much happier night, but I know Mike Ferrin, who did the play-by-play for them, was near incredulous working with Tom Candiotti in that Arizona booth. So, but they were having a lot of fun on that side.
Obviously, their starting pitching is becoming a little bit of an issue here. Eickoff gets demoted here. Number one, what are they doing to replace Eickoff? Any game plan on that yet?
Well, the funny thing is they don't know yet. They have TBA listed as Sunday starter. So at this point, it could be anybody. Certainly the internal options are Cole Irvin. You could bring him back. Do you want to try to go with somebody like Angel De Los Santos? I don't know if that's great either. What you don't want to do is kind of have a starting pitcher roulette, or you bring Vince Velasquez back. But right now, the Phillies really need him in that back end of the bullpen and need him to learn how to excel in the back end of the bullpen. So who knows? They could be hoping to make a trade by then. They could go with a bullpen game, as Matt Gelb of The Athletic suggested, but that doesn't inspire much confidence.
That's an interesting, the Velasquez, what they want to do with him. Do they seem happy with him in the role in the bullpen right now? I mean, I know we've suggested it, you and I, for the last 3 years, that this would be a good role for him. Number one, how do you think he's handling it? Number two, do they like him in the role?
It's kind of hard to say if they like him. He's kind of had some ups and downs so far. He seems to be trending in a good direction. His last eighth inning was a big eighth inning for the Phillies ahead of a Hector Neris save. So I think they would probably want to roll with this for a while, especially, if you take him out of that role and put him back in the starting rotation, then who is your eighth inning guy then? I mean, if they already have J.D. Hammer, Edgar Garcia, a lot of guys that are like way ahead of when they should have been up in the Phillies bullpen. And unless you get back Pat Neshek somebody soon, or Tommy Hunter soon, or Adam Morgan soon, I think you need at least two of them back before you even think about putting Vince Velasquez in a starting rotation. But again, you've been there and done that, so it seems like they would be best suited by letting this play out and see how he can do with this role long term.
Well, and the possibility then of, you mentioned J.D. Hammer and Garcia, fine options, but they have other options that are going to remove those guys or push them down the ladder, which I guess essentially could free up Velasquez if they wanted to go back down that road.
Yeah, but I think ideally, they've been saying it since the offseason. I mean, Phillies president Andy McPhail flat out said they needed a left-handed arm back in the offseason, and after they did not land Jay Happ or Patrick Corbin, they kind of rolled with what they had, still kind of feeling all along like they needed to add somebody from the left side. And I think the Phillies will still be looking to add somebody from the left side. So, the next 6 weeks are going to be very important as you see which pitchers become available and just how aggressive they are going to be on that trade market.
Yeah, I know the Kimbrel is now unavailable. He's with the Cubs, and Keuchel went to Atlanta, right?
Yeah, so those are just two of the options. There'll be other options out there that they can pursue.
So, well, there's other options out there, but so they're out on those two big names there. You wonder, had this been a problem 2 weeks ago where Eickoff just, was giving up home runs left and right, would they have reconsidered getting in on Keuchel, or were they just not interested in him? Kimbrel's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I kind of break that down in the mailbag, not to get too far ahead of myself. I think that they are okay with some of the other options out there.
Okay, so maybe we can dive into that in just a minute here. By the way, so Eickoff goes to the bullpen, right? I mean, he's going to stay up at the big league level, but he's just going to go to the bullpen. Does that mean that somebody in that bullpen is going to have to get shipped out?
This is really interesting because they haven't said. I kind of thought that after yesterday they would have swapped out an arm from their current bullpen for another person that can give them some length, but they did not do that. So I think that they aren't really sure yet either because, they do have a minor league option available for Eickoff. If they feel that down the line he can help in the starting rotation. I mean, they might decide that, hey, we'll send you to AAA. You start every 5 days, get your stuff together, and then, maybe down the line if we need a starter, you're it. But I think they just haven't really decided yet because I just think after last night they watched that game and after getting whiplash, looking around at those home runs, I think they finally just said, okay, I think we need to pull the plug on this, and then we'll figure out the rest later.
In your opinion, is Cole Irvin the best minor league option that they have?
That's a hard one to say. At this point, I think yes. I don't think they're sold on him yet as being ready for a major league rotation. The other option would be Aniel De Los Santos, who's had some success as a starter there.
Right.
They've had to grab him a few times for the bullpen up here. I think the thing with De Los Santos is the Phillies really need to commit to him as a starter or as a reliever and really shape him. They've yet to really sort of do that. Now, heading into the spring training, it was my thought that they were going to start to shape him into being a back-end reliever. But they gave him starts in spring training. They've made him a starter this season so far. They ended up grabbing him for the bullpen anyway for a while. And then what do you know? He went back to starting. So I think they really need to decide what his future is going to be or what their strategy with De Los Santos is going to be. And then only when they figure out what they're doing with him can maybe they decide if he's an option for the rotation. Yeah,
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. I mean, it's been a rough week for them. They lost Sir Anthony Dominguez. They lost Adam Hazley. So the injuries continue to pile up. And the odd part is, it's in the areas that you and I talk about almost weekly, the bullpen and center field. So, it seems that they've got, they went out and got, an organizational bullpen depth. But now you're adding starting pitching is right at the top of the list of the problems they're having as well. It seems like these three things keep coming up. And you wonder how long Matt Klentak can sit on his hands here.
Yeah, and it might be a matter of who's willing to make a deal. It's because before there's still a lot of teams in this thing. And if you're a team right now who is 2 games out of, maybe two games behind the 500 mark, right?
Yep.
The 500 mark is not far from a wild card spot. So if you're one of those teams, you're kind of hanging in saying, okay, well, if we can win a few series here, maybe we go on a little bit of a run, then we're going to be in a position to sell, or maybe they feel that if they'll keep an eye out in case they trend in the other direction. And one of the real problems with all this is, if you're the general manager trying to make these decisions, you probably also have ownership behind you whispering into your ear, we don't want you to give up on this season because we won't sell any tickets. So that's the other thing that kind of happens here. So even when you think it's the right baseball move to sell some pieces, if you think that you don't have a realistic opportunity to make the playoffs, even though you're kind of hanging in and you want to sell. I remember, I forget what year it was, maybe like 15 years ago, that the Chicago White Sox were kind of teetering like that, and the ownership, Jerry Reinsdorf, made the decision to sell, and it seemed at the time like the White Sox had a shot. But I guess the baseball minds knew better, and they sold, but it didn't go over very well in Chicago.
That brings us into Jack's question. He wants to know, what do you prioritize going into next month's trade deadline? So, yeah, they have some logistical problems trying to find a partner, but what should they be prioritizing with that partner?
Well, for me, my Phillies shopping list is a threefold shopping list, and it's kind of what we were just saying. I think the Phillies need to add a center fielder, a natural center fielder, preferably somebody who bats from the right side, somebody that when Adam Hazley is healthy again, which shouldn't be that long. It doesn't sound like it's that serious that he'll be back soon. But either way, you don't want the rookie off on his own. You want to get somebody who can play center field, who's done that before, who has been able to play a solid center field in the past. And, there's one name that comes to my mind, and that's Cameron Maybin, currently with the Yankees. Somebody like him, the Yankees are going to get Giancarlo Stanton back. They're going to get Aaron Judge back. And when they do so, they might have an expendable Cameron Maybin. So if I'm the Phillies, I'm keeping my eye on somebody like that who could be an established center fielder and bat from the right side. Second on the list there would certainly be the starting rotation. I think the Phillies will be in on Madison Bumgarner best they can. They're going to keep an eye out on other options out there because they've known all along they need a left-handed starter, and that Dodgers sweep really underscored the need for that left-handed starter. So that's number 2 on the list for me. And then the number 3, of course, would be a back-end reliever. And, the Phillies need somebody other than Hector Neris in that bullpen that can be a slam dunk. And, one name that keeps coming up is Ken Giles, the former Phillies closer, who had his ups and downs in Houston. It took him being traded to Toronto, where basically Houston was dumping him and Toronto was dumping Roberto Osuna, who was, up on charges for assault when they traded him.
That was a pretty controversial deal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and Osuna ended up being cleared. I can't speak much to the incident, but just the fact that the trade happened under those circumstances could tell you how far Ken Giles had fallen with the Astros. But he's having a really nice season with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are going nowhere, and maybe they'll trade him to the Phillies or somebody else. So you might want to be in on a name like that. I didn't include this on the mailbag, but I caught the Pirates and Braves on Thursday at Pittsburgh, and Francisco Liriano has been having a great season as a reliever, his first season in a relief role. They also have Felipe Vasquez, who could be people who fill that role as well. Center fielder, starting pitching, bullpen. If the Phillies could grab one of each, I know that's a big shopping list. When you consider how many prospects it's going to take. But but if they can get those, and keep an eye on Roman Quinn, of course, because if he can get it together and stay healthy for once, maybe he could help solve center field internally. So of the 3, I would say center field is the one they're most likely to solve internally, but I would still try to get somebody if I'm in.
Now, let's go through a couple of guys here and see if you have any update for us, Frank. Tommy Hunter hasn't pitched all year. Close, not close, any news on him?
It sounds like of the relievers, he may be one of the more one of the most close, I guess, to returning. But until he gets on a mound and throws some live game action, it feels like forever. So probably Ed O'Brien Ramos is the one of all the injured relievers who's the closest, and I know that's not the name that everybody wants to hear. But it also sounds like Gabe Kapler was saying on Friday that Neshek wasn't far away, that Adam Morgan wasn't far away, and Hunter isn't that far away. Now, what that exactly means is yet to be seen, and will they skip a rehab assignment for these guys given the circumstances? Is one of those guys without a rehab assignment a better option than what we have now that we're watching every night? They may decide that somebody who hasn't been out as long, like Neshek or Morgan, doesn't need one, which could move that along quicker. I would think Hunter needs a rehab assignment. So until you see him pitch one of those, I think this is what we're going to be watching the next week or two. Wow. But they could all kind of come together rather quickly. I mean, if you listen to Kapler on Friday, he seemed optimistic about those 3 in particular.
Now, in this piece at 97.3 ESPN.com, in the mailbag, you wrote that Dominguez, Arano, and David Robertson all feel like could be gone for the year. I wasn't aware that Robertson could be done for the season. Is that a strong possibility now?
Well, I don't think anything has changed. When he got his second opinion with Dr. James Andrews, he didn't say, "Okay, we're going to cut you open and do surgery." The first step is to see if this injury will kind of heal on its own, and just with rest. But if it doesn't happen, I mean, you're looking at. I would say right now it's really hard to say with certainty. He's somebody you can rely on down the stretch.
Yeah,
but there is no update that has precluded him. But I think that you have to go forward as if you can't count on him. So, if you approach the trade deadline like you're going to say, okay, well maybe Dave Robertson will be back in August or September. I think the better plan is to try to get somebody.
I want to ask you a question because you mentioned center field that I get a lot just because of the proximity, but a lot of people around here have wondered, a guy like Matt Cesar, who was with the Cubs and the Padres, he's a center fielder, got some speed. Would he be somebody who fits the mold of someone that the Phillies should look into trying. I mean, obviously he's been down in the minors, so my answer is, look, it's easy to say the local guy, go get him, but there's a reason he hasn't been. I mean, he's with a bad Padres team last year, and there's a reason why he has not stuck in the majors, right?
Yeah, well, he has. It's funny you mentioned that. He did catch my attention a few weeks ago. He's actually having a pretty nice season in AAA. I mean, he's batting .333. He's got 5 home runs, 17 RBIs, 6 doubles. He's had a pretty decent season out of the Pacific Coast League. But that's a very interesting name that I had not really thought about. Maybe it's because he's kind of been in the minors for a while. As much as we like the local guy, he might be that what they often call the quadruple A type player. That's down to AAA that can come up and help you for a bit, but probably is somewhere in between a AAA player and a major league player. So, I mean, last year with the Padres, he batted under 200, which was a little difficult. But even when the Cubs let him go, he was 211 back in 2017, and then he hit 227 the rest of the way. So I mean, he's the kind of guy that's going to play very well probably at AAA. Isn't going to hit as much in the major leagues, but a guy that's a great guy, and you don't mind having on your team if you need to grab somebody if somebody's hurt.
Yeah. By the way, hit 187 last year. He's with Arizona right now in their minor league system. Frank Klose, why don't the Phillies try to pick up? Now, the specific question from Brad was Mike Minor, but I guess you can really broaden it to say a more veteran, pitcher for this rotation.
Well, I think Mike Minor is the sexy name for a lot of people because the Phillies had expressed interest in Mike Minor. That was pretty widely reported. They didn't work out a deal with the Texas Rangers heading into the season. They were trying in spring training, and I think it was Ken Rosenthal, the Athletic, who reported that the Rangers have received offers for Minor so far this season. During the season, you can put 2 and 2 together. You kind of wonder if the Phillies were one of those teams making inquiries along the way. But they've been holding out, and Mike Minor's been having a very, very nice season. But the problem with Mike Minor is that he's having a really nice season, and he's helping the Texas Rangers stay in this thing. The Rangers are 5 games above 500, and if you're looking at a team there that's only 1.5 games behind the Phillies record-wise, you have to ask the question: are they even going to sell? And then I was kind of having that conversation with people on Twitter last night, and this morning JP Morosi of MLB.com had said, "Hey, the Rangers could go either direction. They're actually even looking at starters themselves.
Yeah, because
if they're going to be a team that's like 5 games above 500, even as you get to the trade deadline, I mean, why would you throw it all in? So even though that was a team people expected to compete, did not expect to compete this year, they're competing. Another team too is the Arizona Diamondbacks, which you just saw hit all those home runs last night. They seemed like they were going to be rebuilding. They traded Paul Goldschmidt. And a lot of teams looked at, you asked about other names, Robbie Ray, who's pitching for the Arizona Diamondbacks, who's a lefty starter. They might not trade him either because they're not going to catch up with the Dodgers. The Dodgers had a 10-game lead as of yesterday. I didn't see what the results were last night, but they're certainly in it for a wild card. So with teams like that in it, that have good players, well, those good players are helping teams stay in, and they may not even trade them.
By the way, real quick, instant reaction from Frank. The Phillies lineup is out. It's been out for a little bit, but Cesar Hernandez, Bryce Harper, Segura, Hoskins, Realmuto, Jay Bruce, Kingery in center, Sean Rodriguez at third. And I guess I bring this up only to ask because with McCutchen out for the year, they've gone with Hernandez in the leadoff spot. They've bumped Harper up to 2 and gone with Segura 3. Do you like what Kapler has done with this lineup without McCutchen?
Well, I think that Cesar to the leadoff spot was kind of the natural response in terms of finding a new leadoff hitter, especially because Hernandez had been pitching pretty well in recent days. Hitting well in the recent days. So that seemed to make sense, and he's someone who's done it before with success. So that's what I think you need to do. But then on the other end, I think they would prefer not to have Maikel Franco in the lineup and have Scott Kingery at third base, but unfortunately, their center fielder got himself arrested, so they're in what they're in. And I think in an ideal world, You have somebody in center field who can catch the ball a little better, and you play Scott Kingery at third base. And if having Rodriguez in this lineup is any indication, the Phillies aren't too thrilled with putting Franco at third base much anymore. So who knows? Maybe by July 31st, you won't even see him on this team anymore.
It's crazy. Are there signs around the ballpark, Frank, that the team is essentially cutting its ties with Herrera?
Well, they did remove all the signage, apparently. It's actually really funny. Somebody tweeted last night that somewhere up in the upper deck, and I have to go see this for myself, they had a Freddie Galvis banner up. So I almost wonder if they went into the closet to see what they could throw up really fast in the wake of these Herrera banners. But they did remove a lot of the prominent signage for Odubel Herrera. They did ask that his name be taken off the All-Star ballot. So they are separating themselves very much from the situation, even though the investigation is pending, and we probably won't hear anything for at least another week, maybe more.
By the way, I applaud them for that. Udebe Ramos update, struck out the side on Monday in his first rehab appearance on 12 pitches. So that's good news for the Phillies bullpen. Just throwing that out there with the news today. Eickoff has been demoted to the bullpen. Roman Quinn went 2 for 4 with a run score yesterday in a rehab game. So you got that as well. So a pair of potential helping hands having some good games in the minor leagues. That's down in Clearwater. Last one for Frank from the mailbag. Mike wants to know, not me, but why weren't the Phillies in on either Kimbrel or Keuchel?
Well, I think there's a reason for both. One at a time. When you look at Dallas Keuchel and the deal that he got from the Atlanta Braves, the deal was a $13 million deal, not for the year and prorated, but it was $13 million the rest of the way. So that would essentially mean that this Phillies team would have spent their entire amount of money under that competitive balance tax just on Keuchel. And that does not leave them room to address any other needs. So I think ultimately the Phillies thought, okay, well, if you trade for a Madison Bumgarner, maybe only $6 million hits your competitive balance tax, and you have still another $7 million or so to pick up a couple other players. So that would have been your one acquisition if you went with Dallas Keuchel. I think ultimately they decided that there would be trade options that they could fit under that a little bit better. And then when it came time for Craig Kimbrel, he kind of had a little rough patch last year. And if you think back to the playoffs, the Red Sox won the World Series by using Chris Sale and Nate Eovaldi as their back-end relief options for when they were trying to nail down a game. They didn't go Kimbrel. Now, even though Kimbrel has never blown a postseason game, and he's certainly not the guy that we used to see pitch for the Atlanta Braves or the San Diego Padres, or even the beginning of his Red Sox career. So I think they were willing to take a shot on Craig Kimbrel if he would sign a one-year deal. But what we saw happen is the Minnesota Twins, they got involved because they're a surprise contender, and I think they really want to make something of the season. And then the Chicago Cubs, absolutely desperate. They essentially went into this season without a closer, and they know that their window to compete is really closing on them. So what ended up happening was the Cubs, after the Twins were willing to go 2 years, the Cubs went 3 years. I don't know that that's going to be a really good deal at the end of that deal. The Cubs might not care because their window of competition might be over by then, but I don't think that it made a lot of sense for the Phillies to go beyond this season. And I think that this could be a bad deal by the end of the deal, because if he is trending downward and he does go downward, that could end up being a really, really bad deal. So I could see why the Phillies would stay away from both players.
Yeah, well, I guess the Arrieta taste in their mouth. I mean, I guess they're not thrilled with the return they've got on this $25 million investment in year number 2, and that might have been something that turned them away a little bit, you think?
I don't know if that would have anything to do with it. I think it would be more that the player itself. I don't think that they would think he's a bad player by any means, but there were some indications that his ground ball rate was dipping a little bit, and then maybe they just. But I think with him, though, I think it's just a matter of, do you really want to tie up all of your deadline move money in one player? And really, I know you can say, well, the competitive balance tax is an arbitrary number. You can spend past that. I think the way it's constructed now, there are some negative effects of going over. It's not just about money. It's Sometimes it's tied to draft pick compensation. Sometimes it's tied to international signing money. And I think the Phillies don't feel they're at the point where they can blow past that just yet. So, and then that's a baseball move, not a money move. And that's why I think that the next CBA, they're going to try to whittle some of that away.
He's Frank Klose, at Frank Klose with a K. And you can check out the Phillies Mailbag on our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. By the way, Phillies and Braves are tied at 37 and 29 at the top of the National League East. And they will face off this weekend. Some favorable pitching matchups. They did have to run into some of the Braves' best, but that's coming up this weekend at Phillies Braves. All right, Frank, appreciate the time as always, pal.
Thanks, Mike.